Hello, everyone. All right. Let's just give it a few minutes for everyone to come in. Hey, Dylan, you can hear me loud and clear, right?
Yep. All good.
All right. Just give it some more time. Dylan, where are you based? I've never asked you this.
Yeah. So I'm in Tallinn in Estonia. So I'm originally from the UK, but I moved to Estonia like maybe 6 years ago now, actually. Yeah.
Okay. Any particular reason, Estonia?
Not really. Like it's kind of random how I ended up here. There's like a lot of SaaS companies and startups that come out of Estonia, and I was doing the whole digital nomad thing for a little while. And then after this, when we started building Hey Digital, I kind of wanted to like stop traveling all the time. You know, it's like not the most conducive environment to productivity, like moving every month or 2 months or something like this. So we just decided to come and give Estonia a try because I'd heard about the tech scene here and other things like this. I thought I'd be here for maybe a year, but it's been like nearly nearly 6 years since then.
All right. Yeah. I have a couple of friends. I mean, Estonia is famous for like digital governance, digital
Yeah,
voting,
exactly.
all of that, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've heard about that from a bunch of friends who operate in those industries, that like Estonia is like the standard for some of those things. Anyways, cool. Let's get started, Dylan. Hi, everyone. Excited. Thanks. Grateful that you can all make it today. And I'm excited to host Dylan, CEO of Hey Digital, a leading SaaS performance marketing and creative agency. Dylan, over to you for a quick intro so that we can then kick it off.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you. Thank you so much for introducing me. I'm really happy to be here, to be doing another session with someone from the Factors team as well. So I'm Dylan. I am the CEO of Hey Digital. We are a SaaS-focused like performance marketing and creative agency. So we are running the paid ads campaigns and creative production for right now around about 30 different SaaS businesses. We've been doing this for just over 6 years now and have worked with some really great well-known SaaS companies like Hotjar, Pitch, Right Sonic, PostHog, a bunch of others like that too. So a lot of the ads that you will see on LinkedIn or Google or Facebook, Instagram, any of these places for SaaS companies, we've often had some kind of involvement in a lot of these. So really happy to be here, happy to answer any questions, have a nice chat with you about LinkedIn ads specifically today, and hopefully be able to share some relevant experience both from our client base and also from ourselves and our own data as well, because we are running our own LinkedIn ads. We like to what's the phrase that people use, like, eat our own dog food as well at the same time, right? So we run our own ads across a lot of different channels as well. And yeah, just happy to be here and have a good conversation with you today.
Yeah, excited to have you here, Dylan. It's always been like, we've always collaborated very, very well, like, and hopefully we'll continue that partnership going forward also. And everyone, my name is Praveen. I'm one of the founders of Factors.ai. I take care of product, customer success, and marketing at Factors. Factors is a account intelligence and ABM platform specifically focused on helping you get most out of your LinkedIn and Google ads investments. We currently work with around 300 customers globally, and Hey Digital is also one of our customers. So excited to have this conversation. So Dylan, just to get started, right? Typically, when I speak to anyone who's tried LinkedIn ads before, plans to try LinkedIn ads in future, the conversation almost always starts with it's too expensive, right? And is that something that I'm assuming it's something that you've heard quite frequently as well? What do you think? Why do you think that is the case? Like, why is there this perception that LinkedIn ads is like really, really expensive? And is that like one generally true? And if so, how do you then use a channel which is seen as being more expensive than others?
I think the notion of like LinkedIn ads being expensive, I think it's true based on the way that we track, report on LinkedIn ads in comparison to other channels, right? Like everything is always within reason, or like it depends on the lens that you're looking through this from. And so we're here, we're talking about the SaaS space. That's where we both work, where we function. And I think if we look at ads channels that traditionally most people would say within the SaaS market are the most quote unquote like cost effective, that's always going to be Google, or in some cases Microsoft ads, things like this. And the reason that people feel that way and say that is because those are like intent driven platforms, right? If someone sees your Google ad, it's because they have searched for a very specific term. They've been served your ad. It's usually some high intent keyword. It could be like, I don't know, ads reporting software or something like this, right? If they've searched for that, they've clicked on your ad, the chances of them then booking onto a demo call, signing up for a free trial, progressing through the funnel, that's going to happen much, much faster than a LinkedIn ad, right? So if we think about LinkedIn, LinkedIn as a channel isn't necessarily somewhere that people are going to immediately be searching for new software products. When we serve someone an ad on LinkedIn, we're interrupting them. They're there to consume content, ultimately to connect with other people. Maybe they're doing some sales outreach, whatever. But LinkedIn is not a search, like intent driven platform. And so based on the way a lot of people measure the success of their ads, whether that's last click attribution or first click attribution, however we want to look at it, anything in between, a channel like Google on the surface is always going to seem cheaper or better ROI than something like LinkedIn. The truth of the matter though is, for what we're seeing with a lot of our like B2B SaaS clients, from what you guys see in the data that you have available to you, actually that's not necessarily the case. Often LinkedIn ads can be and is one of the most cost-effective channels, but only if you have visibility into that data, and only if you're able to analyze that data from a different perspective. So rather than only looking at, okay, someone saw the LinkedIn ad, they clicked it, they booked a demo immediately, and therefore they're going to be attached to the pipeline and the deal that we have in HubSpot. If you actually take a step back and you look at, and you have a way of looking at the entire user journey, when you look at the metrics and the data that way, you're going to see a completely different picture to the impact of your LinkedIn ads. And I think that's the biggest reason why most people think LinkedIn is an extremely expensive channel, because in reality, for most companies that don't have effective ways to measure these interactions and this performance, to them, through the limited information that they have, of course it is an expensive and most likely underperforming channel, but really they only have access to 1/3 of the truth of what's happening from their campaigns. And I'm sure we're going to speak about this probably in more depth. I could even give examples from Hey Digital ourselves, like the ads that we run, we're spending not significantly, but around about this month we'll do, by the time July ends at the end of today, I think we'll have spent like 3,500 euros on our LinkedIn ads. The majority of them are thought leader ads. We have some retargeting ads in there and then some text ads as well. If I look at my HubSpot report and I look at the LinkedIn conversion report, I think right now it maybe tells me we've had like one conversion, and that's like a call being booked or something. But when I look in my Factors dashboard and I look at a list of like all of the deals that we have in HubSpot right now that have been impacted by our LinkedIn ads, that number is pretty significant. And if I take a step back from that and I look at all of the companies who have viewed our LinkedIn ads multiple times and then come to our website and been engaged on our website, that then tells a completely different story as well. So really, I don't think the problem is like one channel being more expensive than the other. I think it's just most people have a limited viewpoint into what's truly going on within the platforms.
Got it. So just to unpack this, Dylan, so one is, you said that it is not a high intent channel like Google. And also, more importantly, and consequently, it is not like a channel where users are kind of immediately seeing your ad and clicking on it and going and booking a demo, right? Like on search, somebody searches for a specific keyword or a search query, they see an ad, it's very likely that they'll click on it, land on a landing page, and take that next action of saying, let me book a demo, assuming that the landing page kind of satisfies their inquiry in the first place, right? Now, on top of that, you also mentioned that there is this issue of measurement framework. So you are applying a measurement framework which is kind of primed for high intent search channels like Google and Bing ads, and then kind of force fitting it onto a channel which operates very differently, right? Like a LinkedIn as a channel, right? So there is a measurement philosophy that needs to be kind of changed. And thirdly, like you mentioned, like you need to have access to that data, right? You need to have access to that data of which companies have seen your ads, how many of them later come back to your website, and then how many of them like book a call, maybe through direct as a channel or directly reply to like an SDR outreach or a LinkedIn outreach from one of your salespeople, but then they did hear about you from LinkedIn, right? Now, so unpacking this a bit. So when, let's say you're speaking to like a customer and they say, hey, this is like our perception today is that LinkedIn is expensive. Yep. How do you kind of give them a playbook to say, this is how I'd recommend that you start? So you've explained this to say this is like one of the challenges, but how do you help them get started? Because I think the starting trouble is what is holding back a lot of investment into the channel.
Yeah. To be honest, it can be tough at times, right? Because I know, and you know, and anyone that utilizes deeper tooling that gives them a clearer insight into what's going on, we all know that, okay, with some tooling in place, we get a totally different picture and story of what's happening. Unfortunately, though, a lot of marketers or marketing teams, to get the sign off on like bringing on a new piece of tooling or something like this can be a multi-step like process and journey. And sometimes if I was to say as like the CEO of an advertising agency, if I to say to a prospect or a new client, hey, the only way that you're going to make LinkedIn ads quote unquote work is if you work with us and you buy this external piece of software, a lot of the time that's not going to be the answer that people need to hear, right? And so we have to find this middle ground. Often it comes from probing and asking questions, because like I have to ask a VP of marketing or a CMO, okay, how are you and your team truly measuring the impact of your like marketing and sales activities? What's important to you? Because ultimately every team has like a different way of reporting, different goals, different KPIs, whatever. So first of all, I have to do, and my team have to do some probing to understand like what's actually important to these people, what metrics do they need to see, what data infrastructure do they have right now, like what do they have visible in HubSpot or Salesforce, whichever tool they're using, how are they tracking things. So we have that conversation first. Then if it's a case of like, okay, the only options available to them is like running LinkedIn ads and then reporting based on what LinkedIn ads tells them and what their HubSpot or something else tells them, then we have to start with fundamentals, right? So it's like, okay, we might know, and this is where working with an agency like ours can give some additional insight based on the data that we have from our own ads and from our clients' ads. And I can share this with everyone watching this right now. Like my average sales cycle at Hey Digital, I know I'm not a SaaS company, but I'm selling into SaaS companies, so it's still interesting and relevant. Like our average sales cycle from when someone books the initial discovery call to when the deal with us closes, this window is usually 20, like right now it's 28 days. If I look in HubSpot, this is 28 days. I look at now how long and how many days, how much time do people see my ads before they book that first call. I think for the last quarter, that was also very close. It was like 32 days or something like this. So with this in mind, in theory, someone needs to see ads from us for like 31 days before they even consider booking a call. And then once they've booked that call, there's another 30 days before a deal closes on average. So this is a 60-day window. A lot of SaaS companies will know what their sales like window and cycle traditionally looks like. So if they don't have deeper information, they need to take that into consideration, and they need to have the basics like covered, right? You build out the LinkedIn campaigns in the exact same structure, and anyone who's watching this can go to my LinkedIn profile. They can slide through, they can see like suggested LinkedIn ad structures and things like this, or you can reach out to me and I'll just send you our like documentation on this too. But you do the basics right, because we would still build out the campaigns in this way, whether we have reporting tooling, attribution tooling or not, we would still do this. But the area where you're going to have a bit more of a lack is like you won't see all of the leading indicators. So unfortunately, you just have to kind of like trust that this is going to either work or not work, but you have to run the tests and the experiments for the length of what your typical sales cycle looks like, and then ideally a little bit longer than this, and then look at the like data off the back of that of, okay, maybe we've been running LinkedIn ads for 90 days. Have we seen an increase in pipeline generation or pipeline velocity? Or are we seeing in our forms people saying that they've seen us on LinkedIn? Are we seeing in reviewing sales conversation recordings on like Gong or Fathom or whatever? Are we seeing the mention of LinkedIn like more? You have to rely on those things that unfortunately you don't have like hard concrete proof. And I think that's the reason why, to be honest with you, I think that's the reason why so many software companies will start to spend on LinkedIn. And in my opinion, cut their budgets, reduce their budgets, or stop spending entirely so far too early, like way too early, because they're a bit scared about this, which I understand too, right? Like no one really wants to run ads and not see direct and immediate impact. But I would ask anyone who's like watching this or anyone who's like considering running more ads on LinkedIn, like how do you like think about how you buy software, products, tools? I can almost, or even actually just be honest with yourself. When was the last time you clicked a LinkedIn ad? Like sit down and ask yourself that. I probably couldn't tell you. I spend hours every day on LinkedIn. I couldn't tell you the last time I clicked on a LinkedIn ad. But that doesn't mean LinkedIn ads aren't like successful and don't have an impact on me. I discover so many companies through ads, but I consume the ads and then I find them myself later, or I reach out to them or they'll reach out to me or whatever, right? So it's really challenging. I'll try not to ramble like too much more on this topic, but it's kind of frustrating because LinkedIn's targeting capabilities, structure, the people that spend time on here, it's the ideal platform for most of us to be running ads. And I think deep down we all know that. And I think deep down we all know what the true problem is, which is most of us don't have clear insight into the reporting on this. And that's why we don't spend more or run more ads there. However, we know that it works. But if we don't have a way to show that to our CEO or executive team, we just can't spend money there. And it's tough because it's like, yeah, if the last 3 months of testing we've done with our own ads on LinkedIn, based on the numbers in LinkedIn, you would say it's unsuccessful. But based on the deals that I have that have closed and are currently in the pipeline where LinkedIn ads have been a significant touch point, it's the most successful channel where we've ever run ads for ourselves at Hey Digital. Nothing has changed. The ad setup is the same. The campaigns we're running is the same. The structure is the same. Everything is the same. The difference is just the data that we have available to us and which lens we're looking through to see that data. And I think that's the biggest challenge, unfortunately, for a lot of people here.
So on the targeting side, right? So in addition to the measurement side, which obviously is a challenge, and as you mentioned, like getting that true ROI view of all the touch points, including the LinkedIn view through touch points on pipeline. This is obviously one sort of pressing concern. Now, in terms of audience targeting, so one argument I've heard is that because LinkedIn is, as you said, like a low intent channel, people are not there looking to buy software. Rather than targeting like a cold audience, you should always start off with a qualified audience, not just ICP fit, but with some level of intent. It could be companies visiting your website. It could be companies researching about you on G2. It could be companies who are actually, replying to your sales emails and so on and so forth, right? So, what do you think about that piece to say, should you start with a qualified, engaged and ICP fit audience vis-a-vis just like an ICP fit audience? And in your experience, how have you kind of done that?
Yeah. So I would always begin, of course, this depends on the scale of your budgets that you have available to you as well, right? But let's say someone is they're a SaaS company, they're first considering launching LinkedIn ads for the first time or something like this, or even if they've been running ads for the last, 3 to 6 months, I would always start my targeting outside of LinkedIn. Like I wouldn't start from using LinkedIn's inbuilt targeting features, because whilst on the surface those are good because all of our ICPs are often on LinkedIn, the categorization of these targeting sets are often so broad. There's quite a few different articles. I think you guys have probably released articles on this as well that people should check out. But like with the company categorization, they're often using like very broad triggers for categorizing these kind of companies.
Internet and technology as an example.
Yeah, so it's often very broad. So personally, I always begin, and we would always begin with building our own lists for targeting. And there are multiple ways that you can do that, multiple things that you can focus on. I can guarantee like anyone that has a sales team is going to have a list of accounts that the sales team is going after. So for example, at Hey Digital, the very first audience that we built for our LinkedIn ads was just every single company that was in our lists for our outbound emails. We were just serving our ads to them. Like, of course, we then layered in job title targeting and everything else, but the list of the companies was built off of, okay, these are the companies that we're going after with our outbound emails. So there's very easy, obvious things like this. There's then like intent based, like you mentioned, so you can use like G2 data or other platforms like this. Personally, I think, of course, you can go and build a list of like companies that match your ICP. That's still going to be pretty broad, to be honest with you. But if you're going to do that, I would still recommend doing that in an external provider and then bringing that list to LinkedIn rather than building it in LinkedIn. You just need to be extremely careful with exclusions, because one of the challenges that we find a lot of the time is, let's say you're targeting software companies, right? There's so many software companies, so many of them are huge, small, whatever. Even if you put in employee size targeting on LinkedIn and other things like this, you'll often see that if you have a large list, a lot of your budget will get overspent and allocated to the larger companies in that list. You might have 1,000 companies in that list, but you might see that actually 75, 80% of the budget is being allocated to only 10% of the companies in that list, because there might be large companies like, I don't know, Apple, Microsoft, whatever. So that's something that you need to be careful of. But to be honest, I think now with the, let's say, the resurgence of like tools like Clay, RB2B, even like Apollo, you could argue this too. Like a lot of these tools, it's very easy nowadays to build like a list, right? So I always recommend building externally and bringing in. Then as you're scaling and you want to do more testing, like then you can start like playing around with like LinkedIn's filters. But for example, if you try and identify good targeting for, let's say, a B2B software company that's in the enterprise like SaaS market and they're a MarTech provider, let's say that's your ICP, try and show me a targeting capability in LinkedIn where you can confidently say you'll cover those, and you won't find them. There's like internet and software or something is one of the filters that's available on LinkedIn, right? And that triggers for so many random kinds of companies. So yeah, always build external and then bring in. And if you're starting with lower budgets, you do want to start with those like, I don't know if you can even call them higher intent audiences, but the higher quality audiences. So for us, with our limited budgets to begin with, that was like, let's just go after all the companies that are already hearing about us from our emails. And then as we've evolved that, then it's like, okay, let's add companies into that list based on those that have visited our website and spent time on the website and engaged there. Let's add in companies based on attendees of like webinars that we've spoken or other things like this, like extending as we go. But yeah, that would be my recommendation for like first time targeting setups and stuff like this.
Got it. So just to kind of summarize that, first is you're saying rather than using the native filters, build the list outside in some other tool, because otherwise getting the industry tags right, especially if you want to kind of start with a niche and then expand, would be like really hard given the relatively broader industry classification on LinkedIn. Second thing that you mentioned is layer in additional intent signals if as you're scaling up to say companies which already are aware about you in terms of you're reaching out to them on email, they're attending your webinars or LinkedIn lives, they're also visiting your website, checking you out, they're researching about your product category on G2. So add those layers again into that list, and I'm sure obviously exclude customers, opportunities, etc. Right? Yes. So yeah, obviously one of the things that Factors does pretty well is that audience hub integration, where you can build these audiences natively and in one click kind of send it to LinkedIn, and we take care of keeping it updated, etc. Right? Now you mentioned interestingly about the impression sort of control issue, right? In terms of saying, let's say you start with a list of 1,000 companies, and obviously we've seen that, and we obviously have like a capability that we released recently for managing that. But I have also, we work with around at least 50 customers who spend like significantly large amounts on LinkedIn, right? Like one of them actually spends like $250,000 a month, like $3 million a year. And LinkedIn is one of their primary channels to advertise. The stats that I have from them from like a couple of months before is like Microsoft took up 3% of the impressions, Salesforce took up like 2.5% of the impressions, and so on and so forth. And the top 50 companies if I remember right, took up around 45% of their impressions. And they were targeting a TAM list of, I think, 2,000 odd companies, right? So imagine a marketer in that company who's loaded up that, they've done all of this work, as you said, build that list outside, aligned with the sales team to say, this is what we're going after, loaded that up into LinkedIn, ran a campaign, and effectively around 50 companies are taking up 50% of your budget. And the remaining 1950 companies are seeing like very little, right? Now, how do you actually solve for that issue? Obviously, it's an issue of company size and more employees being active from those companies on LinkedIn, and hence the ads being served there. So today, how do you address that problem?
Yeah, honestly, it's really hard to address without, again, like I'm trying not to. I try not to make me just sit here and tell everyone like how great you guys' like solution is that you've built, right? But like honestly, if we think about the routes and the options to solving this problem, the first step is most people don't even know that that's going on, which is like sad and also crazy, right? Like most people have no idea that that's happening. And when we like audit their ads accounts, or we tell them about this, or hopefully when they see sessions like this, they'll go and check and they'll be like, oh, damn, that's happening to me as well. So unfortunately, most people, or a lot of people, don't even realize that this is a problem, which is why I'm glad you guys are talking about it more in your content. We're trying to do more of the same too. But realistically, the only way to stop that at the moment without additional tooling is you have to go and manually check your audience like metrics in LinkedIn. Once you spot and notice that some of these companies are taking up a large portion of the spend or the impressions, you then go in and manually add those companies to the exclusion list, right? Now, this is how most people do it. If you're an agency like us, obviously we have processes in place where every single day we are checking these things in our clients' accounts. But if we're realistic and honest, if it's a SaaS company that is an internal marketer that is running your own ads and you're doing 10, 20 other things, maybe you're checking your LinkedIn ads daily, but you're probably not checking them every single day. And if you are checking them every single day, you're probably not checking those things every single day. Instead, you're looking at like the conversion metrics and other things like this, right? So I think a lot of people miss it for this reason. But as far as I'm aware, the only way of like stopping that without using something like you guys have recently built is to just manually go in and remove these companies. Now, the challenge is you then have to do that every single time you see it and in every single campaign that you're running. And if you're running like a bunch of campaigns, this can be a real challenge, right? And be very, very time consuming. To be honest, like I think I told you this actually probably in like a while back when you were telling me about what you guys were building. We'd noticed this problem too, and we were thinking of like building out our own like internal tooling and solution to help with this and to support with this, because it's definitely, I think if someone's spending like 5K a month on their LinkedIn ads, for example, they're not going to feel a drastic impact from this. Of course, it's still happening to them, but it's not going to feel like they're wasting a bunch of money or it's really hard to manage, right? But once you're spending like 20, 30, 50, 100, 200K a month, that amount of money that you're wasting becomes extremely significant. So yeah, I don't think, unless I'm wrong, I don't think there's a way of managing that outside of doing it super manually or using the solution that you guys have built, for example.
Now, one thing I've heard from people is that you can split your campaigns. Like one strategy is to say, pick out all the heavy hitters, so to speak, put them in like one campaign, and kind of break up your campaigns that way so that the extent of this problem is kind of limited, right?
Yeah.
Is that like a viable strategy? Like how hard is that campaign explosion sort of problem?
Yeah. I think it depends, because it's like, it's viable in terms of, in theory, it works, right? Like in theory, this works, you can do this. If your spends are small, it probably doesn't make sense going that segregated across all of your different campaigns, because then if you're running it yourself internally, that's going to give you even more campaigns to monitor, to manage. And also, like, the more campaigns you have, the more stretched your budget is going to become, and then the less conversion volume or an activity there's going to be in those campaigns, and therefore the harder to like optimize and learn from. That's one route of thinking that some people may take. But the other one is like, let's say you do pull, you separate those and you have one campaign that's like your heavy hitters, like you say, for example, it could be your Microsoft, Amazon, like the big Fortune 100 and even Fortune 500 companies. even then, if you have those campaigns where it's just targeting those companies, even with LinkedIn's like job title targeting that you would then layer in to make sure you're triggering for your like ICP and persona, right? Unfortunately, LinkedIn's title targeting and even function targeting still isn't really the best. Like you could put in something as specific as senior growth marketer or demand gen marketer or something like this, and it's still going to trigger for a bunch of like job titles that it thinks are similar to that but aren't actually exactly that. And when we're talking about companies that are the size of these ones and you have that many in a list, you're still, in my opinion, going to end up like, yes, you're targeting just them in one campaign so you can control it a bit more, but I still think you're going to end up with like a bunch of wasted spend as well, and then you're going to have to go in and manually then review the job titles extremely often. So it just gives you like something else to check. But I think if that's your only option and that market segment is a really important one for you, then you're probably going to have to do that, right? Because it's like if that's who you're going after, that might be the best way to run it. But personally, and from our experience, we would try not to segregate like this too much, especially at early kind of spending and budget levels, because I think you end up just wasting a lot. As you scale, you can afford to do these things a little bit more, but otherwise, yeah, I don't think that's the best route to take unless it's like absolutely essential that you do this.
Got it. Understood. Now, a couple of other targeting challenges that I've generally heard, and you mentioned one of them, which is this whole idea that you've explicitly targeted some specific job titles, but when you see the reporting on LinkedIn, you see that there are some job titles which are outside of what you have kind of put in, right? And I've heard from companies about the same thing about a list of companies. Like you uploaded a list of companies, but some company which is not in that list kind of comes up, right?
Yeah.
Have you observed that? And do you know
Yeah.
why that happens?
So I have no idea why that happens. Maybe this is a slightly loaded question and you might have the answer. I don't know, because like we actually just had this last week. So we and the reason we noticed this is because of the like reports that we look at in Factors. So we have a pretty tight audience like targeting list for our own Hey Digital LinkedIn ads that we're running. And we noticed last week that suddenly some ads started serving to one of them was like BP, like British Petroleum. I have no idea, like that definitely isn't in the list, and I have no idea how that happened. And then same with like Microsoft, Apple, and a couple others. We caught it pretty early and then added them into the exclusion lists. But like, yeah, I've definitely seen that happen in our own ads. Whether or not I've seen it happen in our clients' ads, I'm not sure. It's not really something that I'm not hands-on like running the ads myself every single day. I could ask the team though, but based on the fact that we just saw that happen last week with our own ads and we're only spending like $3,000 a month on our LinkedIn ads, I can pretty confidently say that's probably happened in others too. Do you know why that happens? Like, do you have any?
No, I actually don't, because that happens to us as well. So it happens to us, and it's really frustrating, right? When it happens, like I've given us very specific list, and why is the sort of campaign going out of the list? Now, what I've heard from one person, obviously not confirmed, is that one of the issues that is there is, users with multiple jobs at the same time, right? So if you have multiple positions currently, again, this is just a guess. I mean, I'm not sure if this is the reason. So one thing we've heard is it probably is because of users with multiple jobs, maybe like a person who's working as a consultant at a particular company, but his full-time role is some other company, or like a board member, investor, advisor, those kind of like titles as well, because many of them actually add those people into their LinkedIn account, right? So I've heard that could be one of the reasons. Other than that, I have no idea why this happens, but it happens for us, and it happens at a reasonably sizable scale, like something to a point where you would be like, why if it's like, okay, 1-2% of the spend, you wouldn't probably not worry about it, right? It goes beyond that at times.
I think if you're targeting, I know this is a bit very specific, but if you're targeting like marketers in the software like space as well, another thing like that happens a lot is, and this ties into what you were just saying, is you start to see your ads triggering on companies like Pavilion and other ones like this, because people are like sharing that they're members of these communities and they've put that as a job like position on their LinkedIn. The other one that we actually just removed from our own ads yesterday, or this morning, I think this was actually, was like stealth startup. We started seeing that one coming up a lot more too. It's like, we definitely don't have stealth startup targeted in our account lists, but what I can imagine, like you said, is someone has a position that's active and live right now at one of the companies that maybe is in our targeting list, but then they also have this like stealth startup on their profile as well. And so because of that, LinkedIn's now serving our ads to everyone that has like stealth startup. So there's some weird like nuances like that. I'm sure these are things that the LinkedIn team are going to continue to improve over time. But I definitely think those are some of the frustrations for a lot of like marketers that are running LinkedIn ads at any kind of scale, to be honest with you. Yeah.
Yeah, for us, what typically comes up is Fiverr and the gig freelancing platforms, like, because anyone who's kind of working there whilst also working in like a company, they list both of them as like their current jobs on LinkedIn, right? So that's something that comes up. But yeah, I mean, again, it kind of adds to the challenge, right? It's like generally seen as an expensive channel, hard to measure. And when you see the reporting, you see things like this and you're like, okay, why exactly is this happening, right?
Yeah.
Now, moving on, Dylan. So we've covered targeting. Obviously, we've covered measurement in terms of looking at view through impact, and probably we'll just spend a bit more time on that. But in terms of objectives, like, how do you like sort of recommend someone start with LinkedIn? Because there are a variety of things, right? You can optimize for awareness, reach, engagement on the platform. You could drive traffic to the website and website actions or website visits, and then there is lead gen as well, right? And lead gen is probably like the closest to like a search sort of a channel where it is fully trackable, measurable, and so on, right? And I see hence a propensity for a lot of my clients to just use lead gen, to say we spend 100% of our budget on LinkedIn on lead gen, right?
Yeah.
Because it feels quantifiable, it feels measurable, it feels good that way, right? So when you're speaking to clients, how do you actually figure out the right strategy here?
Yeah, honestly, this is really hard because like I have my own viewpoint, which is like a lot of SaaS companies won't like my viewpoint because it makes their LinkedIn ads reporting look like their ads are unsuccessful, like we talked about a little bit earlier on. So I kind of have like a sliding scale, and for us and our team, this is where we have to get to know our clients more, especially at the beginning of the process, and understand like, okay, how are you held accountable? What do you need to report on? Because unfortunately, there are still a lot of SaaS marketing teams where the success and failure of everything that they do is purely measured on like traditional lead gen metrics based on what is being said in platform. So unfortunately, a lot of people are still just running ads so that they can show the rest of the team we've had all of these leads and therefore everything is going well. I hate that, but I wouldn't be honest if I said that doesn't still happen, and I wouldn't be honest if I said that that's not important to some of our clients as well. So I have to be understanding of it, right? Because unfortunately, that's just the way that it is still for a lot of companies. My viewpoint,
but it's shocking, right?
It's crazy. It's crazy. But yeah, I don't know how many more like times we have to talk about this. Like, so many people talk about this on LinkedIn. It's like, it's very hard to change people's thoughts and opinions about this. I know that the Chris Walker approach that was popular over the last few years of like, let's ungate everything, let's not track everything. In theory, it makes sense, but in practicality, if you're a marketing manager or a marketing lead at a Series A, Series B stage SaaS company, and you go to your CEO and you say, hey, look, we're just going to stop tracking everything and we're going to increase our spending. I know that is a very tough conversation to have as well. So I get it. Like, it's hard. Personally, if it's from my perspective, the ideal scenario is that we run ads based on, and we use conversion objectives that tie into what the user journey is. So for example, right now we are, for our clients and for ourselves, a lot of our, especially for Hey Digital, actually all of our prospecting ads, all of our like cold targeting ads on the LinkedIn ads channel for Hey Digital, they're all thought leadership ads that we're running. So it's pushing my own content, which is like templates, examples, opinions on what's going on in SaaS, whatever. If we ran those with a conversion objective of like website conversions, right? It's not really going to work, because that kind of content is structured and built in a way for consumption. Most of them are videos or frameworks. Like no one's, or very few people are going to see that, click on it, go to a website and book a call. It's just not the journey. So we have to take into consideration, okay, what are the ads that we're running? So for those ones, we test with a few different awareness conversion objectives, sometimes just traffic, sometimes in-platform consumption. Like we experiment a little bit with those. But so I like to chunk it based on the goal of the ads. So for those, that's pretty obvious. But with our, let's say our retargeting ads, let's say you've been on our website multiple times, you haven't booked a call with us, but you match our like ICP criteria. With those ads, of course, I'm going to serve you like a website conversion objective where the conversion goal is to get you to book a call, right? Because that makes sense for the structure of those ads. So if you don't have this freedom and flexibility, and you can't take the approach of, let's not even care about conversion actions on LinkedIn and let's just run the ads, right? If you can't do that, which most people can't, I would at least structure the conversion objectives based on what the goal of those campaigns is. I'm not going to say like lead gen campaigns are useless, because they're not by any means. And we have a lot of clients that are running those and are happy with those. When it's downloadables, a lead gen campaign makes a bunch of sense, right? If it's like a downloadable asset, something like this. Where I get a bit nervous with lead gen ads is when people are using them as like, let's say it's a retargeting ad and the goal of the ad is to get someone to book onto a demo, and they click the like book a demo or whatever, and then it pops up a LinkedIn lead gen form. In theory, that should be great, and the performance metrics in LinkedIn are going to look great. But the challenges with that is like it will use the email address that person used to sign up to their LinkedIn account, which is normally a personal email. For me personally, I can't even tell you the last time I opened my email account that's connected to my LinkedIn, And so there are so many cases like that where your campaign might look like, great, we've had all these leads and they're all coming from our very high intent retargeting campaigns, and therefore they're all saying they want to book demos with us. But the conversion rates on those are often lower than if they were to just go to the website and book a call, and you have to do a lot more follow-up with them. It's harder to get them into HubSpot or into Salesforce. You need to set up some Zaps and different things like this. So I think there is a place for lead gen campaigns on LinkedIn, but I would take my conversion actions into consideration based on what the goal of the campaign is. And if you're serving someone videos, like set a conversion action which is focused on getting someone to consume that video, and like you can retarget them with a website conversion action. Like you might get nervous about that because you might think your conversion volume drops or whatever, but really I think, to be honest, that's like the best way to approach things, because otherwise we're all just like trying to lie to ourselves and trick ourselves, right? Of like, but if I set a conversion objective of book a call for every single ad, then I'm going to get more calls being booked. It's like, I don't know. Just again, like I said earlier in this conversation, just ask yourself, whoever's watching this, like, when was the last time you clicked on a LinkedIn ad, and when was the last time you clicked on the ad, immediately booked a call and became like a sales qualified lead for that company that ad you clicked on, right? And just reverse engineer your own journeys and take that into consideration when you're running ads for yourself or your clients.
Yeah, just picking up on that, right? Like, so going by my own experience, especially for these content download ads, right? Like Gartner report or like some really high value asset, which comes as a downloadable content on LinkedIn if I fill out a form. See, most of the time users are on their mobile, right? And they're seeing this ad, they probably fill up the form, but it's not that content is not consumable on the phone. Almost always, right? At least when I've downloaded assets like this, it's just not consumable on the phone because it's a pretty large PDF. You really want it to be on your desktop when you're working, right? So there's already a break there that even if you get a person to download a gated asset, I'm sure you would be sending an email to that same person at the same time to say, hey, this is the sort of PDF of the asset so that you can download it, you can view it on your desktop, right? So we actually tried this, and the surprising challenge we saw was that the open rates of those emails were actually pretty poor for us.
Yeah.
Right. So my worry is I actually don't know if content which is delivered in this form is actually consumed or not. People might be filling out the form, but in reality, it's getting downloaded to their iPhone or like an Android phone. Most likely, they're not going to be able to read it then and there. So they have to take the effort to share it with themselves into like a Slack or WhatsApp or airdrop it into their MacBook and then kind of read it, right? It's sort of like a broken experience over there.
Right. And that's the thing. It's like, okay, so maybe you're paying half the cost to get that conversion as opposed to like a website conversion of downloading the ebook by filling in a form. Like maybe it's half the cost, but like in most cases, like you just referenced, that's the experience. And so actually it's not really half the cost. It just looks like it's half the cost. And I think ultimately that's the biggest challenge that so many of us face in this space when it comes to any of our advertising is like, it's painful, but I think because of the ways that we are still having to track and report on advertising success, it leads us into doing things that we know are broken and we know aren't right, but for some reason we still keep doing them over and over again. And so I think it's like our job to try and provide people, first of all, with better insights, better data that they can look at, better stories that they can paint with that data, but then also to continue raising this conversation around like, okay, if you're running ads, like why are you running those ads? What's the goal of running those ads? How are you expecting these people to consume these ads? Remember that these people that are consuming the ads, they're not just like a random pixel or number in an ads dashboard. Like serve them ads how you would want to consume ads. And really like what we're trying to do ourselves is like, we're always trying to think, how can we create an ad that feels as little like an ad as possible? Like that's another kind of newer angle that we're talking about a lot. Is like, how can I make this ad feel like it's not an ad? And but again, like we said earlier, I know it's so difficult because really, for me with our own ads at Hey Digital, I can't even tell you the last time I seriously looked at the cost per conversion in LinkedIn or in the weekly updates that I get from my team, because I don't care what that is. Because I know that the like companies that we're serving the ads to, the type of content that we're serving is what I want them to be seeing. I know that they're seeing it. And then I use my Factors like dashboard to visualize the user journeys. And I can see that the activity on our site, the way that they interact with us is exactly what I would hope and expect to happen. So as long as I can see all those parts of the picture, actually I don't really care what the costs for a demo being booked are, because I have a much clearer overview of like what's going on. But again, like I know not everyone has it's crazy to even say that this is a luxury, right? To be able to do this, but really this is like, if you think about what marketing is, like I did this video on my LinkedIn a couple of days ago. We just moved into this new office. I've been reading some books about like advertising from America and the UK in the 1940s. And I was like looking at how different advertising was back then. If you tried having a conversation with an ad exec in 1940 about like, okay, show me how you're going to track the impact of this like 1-page long written sales letter ad that you did, they wouldn't even consider that, right? They're just thinking, okay, we're going to serve good content to the right people in the right place, knowing that it's going to have an impact later on. I think it's good that we're able to track and measure so much as SaaS marketers, but it's also like part of our downfall as well, that we become over fixated on every single metric, every single number, and it stops us from leading with like core marketing principles. And so I would also just love to encourage people to like go and read some books and some old, like the way that like go and read Ogilvy on advertising again, like go and read these things and think about that too. And I know it might cause some frustrations or arguments in like internal meetings with the rest of your team or whatever, but we have to like remember what we're actually trying to do with these ads and with this content as well.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I agree with what you said, to say that the fact that we want to that incentive that is set in most companies, right? And I spoke to like 2 of my customers. They're all like, one of them is at like they're all in hundreds of millions in revenue, SaaS companies, right? And the challenge is exactly what you said, that they're measured on cost per lead. And as a marketing team, it's very hard to say internally that, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to do something else, right? Because ultimately it all lines up into some OKR, which is being tracked down, and then it has to kind of go up, right? And some of them very plainly told me, see, that is what I'm measured on. So I really have to kind of deliver on that, right?
Yeah.
Even though deep down that people are not downloading those assets, people are not reading those assets. At best, you're getting an opted-in user for further marketing nurturing.
Yeah. I think the way to like try and solve that, and again, like I said, I don't want to just come on here and just solely pitch like factors, for example, but honestly, it's like, okay, if you use a tool, if you use factors, at least when you do have that conversation internally, at least you have a lot more visual representation and data to back up that. Because it's like, okay, if I went into a meeting, like let's pretend I'm a marketing manager at Hey Digital and I'm reporting to me about our LinkedIn ads performance over the last 90 days. If I just have LinkedIn platform data, it's going to be really hard for me to make it look good. And if I just say to my CEO, hey, look, it doesn't look like it's working, but trust me, it is. There's like nothing to back that up, right? But if I say, hey, look at, like, I literally, as you're talking right now, I was just pulling up, like, I won't share my screen on here, but I'm just looking at this segment I have in my dashboard, which is, okay, companies that have engaged on our LinkedIn ads multiple times and then visited our website, right? And I literally have like, I think over 250, 300 companies that are all matching, or probably 95% of them match our ICP, have seen our LinkedIn ads and have visited our website at some point. If I just was to open a couple on my screen, like randomly right now, I can see, for example, there's a very well-known SaaS company that first saw our LinkedIn ads on the 1st of July, so 31 days ago. And honestly, it looks like they've been seeing our LinkedIn ads at least 2 or 3 times a day, near enough every single day since then. And just yesterday, there was no website activity whatsoever, but just yesterday they came directly to Hey Digital website, and I can see that. And so this again backs up my point earlier on of like, okay, it's taking roughly 30 days of someone seeing our ads consistently before they come to us, but they've come directly to our site, which means the brand recognition has worked, right? If I'm in a meeting with an exec and I show them this and I show them the same experience with 100 other companies, then it's much easier to have that internal discussion of like, okay, maybe we're not able to show the last click attribution to pipeline, but we can see these 200 companies have seen our ads 30 times, they've come to our website, they match our ICP, and then that gives you a little bit more to have those kind of conversations. And as marketers, our job isn't to say this one ad is the only reason that person converted into revenue, because that never happens, right? They consume so many pieces of content, different items. So I think, like, honestly, right now, I think the answer for most people running LinkedIn ads at any kind of scale that is struggling to show that impact, you have to use like something like factors. I'm trying to like get more of our clients on this, but like on this wheel too, because realistically they all want to run LinkedIn ads. They know that the targeting is good. They know their audience is there. Just getting over that first step of like just coming to terms with the fact that, okay, to really see that journey, we might have to use some additional resource and tooling. I really think once you get over that step, and once you visualize this, it's worth it. I'm sure you guys see that even on your like demo calls with potential new clients and stuff. Like, they all know what the problem is, you know what it is, and I'm sure once you show them what you're doing, right, then they're like, oh, okay, the penny drops much faster, right? I'm sure that must happen for you guys.
Yeah, the qualitative sort of view of saying, hey, like one of the aha moments that a lot of our customers have is that qualitative view of they closed a big deal, and then they're able to see that this is how LinkedIn played a part in that, right? And when you see that in a timeline, as compared to a number to say, hey, we showed them 100 ads. But if you're able to see that on 31st July, we showed them so many ads, and on 15th August, we showed them so many ads. Then they came to the website, then they went to G2 and checked you out. And then later they came and filled out a form. Then it makes it harder for you to say, hey, let's just turn this thing off because cost per lead number as reported in HubSpot or Salesforce is like abysmally low, right? Because you have some qualitative signals on which you can build your intuition and still make a case. Anyways, Darren, we have 5 minutes. I want to do like some quick fire questions.
Sure.
In your experience, like for which industries have you seen LinkedIn ads work very well? Are there some industries where it has just not worked for you? And when I say industries, I mean sub-verticals within SaaS, right? Like, so in your experience, yeah.
So actually a lot of the time, I wouldn't even necessarily say the vertical or the sub-vertical is the key driving factor. Actually, a lot of the times it's the price point and the sales process for the SaaS product. And we're still yet to see LinkedIn ads be like a successful, scalable channel for low ACV, self-serve like SaaS companies. Not, of course, I don't want to blanket all of them, but it's definitely harder. The other area where it's been more challenging is companies that have an extremely small total addressable market. So maybe you're an extremely niche SaaS company and you might only have a target list of, or there might only be 200 or 300 companies in the world that can like use your solution or your software. Yes, your deal values might be extremely high, so as a business it still works, but LinkedIn ads can be very challenging in those cases as well. And I would probably also say like anyone who, if your core user and your ICP isn't super active on LinkedIn, like let's say they're never logging into LinkedIn, then running ads on LinkedIn probably doesn't make the most sense either. Sometimes that can be companies with an extremely technical ICP, but we have also seen LinkedIn work pretty well for like companies that have the ICP too. Maybe like CTOs and stuff are a lot more active on LinkedIn than a entry-level developer. Like if you're going after entry-level developers, of course they're on LinkedIn, they're active, but if you compare how many marketing managers at SaaS companies are active on LinkedIn compared to developers, it's going to be drastically different. So those would be the probably three things I would say. It's like how much time they spend on LinkedIn, the size of the total addressable market, and then the ACV value of the SaaS and the like sales process and cycle behind that too. If you're like a $15 a month SaaS product, it's probably going to be pretty difficult to make LinkedIn ads to make LinkedIn ads a scalable channel, in my opinion.
Got it. Now, I know that there's a lot of creative related work that you do as well, right? So if you had to give like one quick tip per persona, like for example, if it's a sales tech company targeting salespeople versus someone targeting marketers versus someone targeting finance team members, right?
Yeah.
Have you, in your experience, uncovered any tip that would be helpful for people who are listening in to say, bottom line, this is what you should take care of on the creative side?
Yeah, I would say creatively, maybe just a test or an experiment that I can suggest everyone to run is like run some tests with UGC ads, like user generated content. There are a couple different ways to approach that. And to be honest, if anyone's like watching this and they want some help, just send me a message on LinkedIn. I can show you some examples or we can even help you create one. But like these ads that are ideally like power users or customers of yours or someone that uses the tool a lot, let's say 45 seconds to a minute. The hook can be something along the lines of like, I'm going to show you how I do X using Y tool or something. I can share a bunch of really strong examples, but definitely UGC ads, experimenting with those a little bit. I do really also think the thought leadership ads playbook, I know it's talked about a lot on LinkedIn. I know your question to me was about creative, kind of borders whether it's creative or not, but like utilizing thought leader ads for sure, whether that's your CEO and your founder or actually running the playbook of like, you do a session like this and the other person that was on the session, you get them to do a post about the session and then you put some paid spend behind that. I know you guys have done that even with me and some other people, I think, or like if you have a user of yours talking about a workflow they've built in your tool, ask them if you can put some spend behind that as a thought leader ad. I think those two are areas that will continue to be talked about a lot more over the next 6 months or so, but are definitely still opportunities to focus on. And then to be honest, for more like standard business as usual ad designs and tips, I would just say, because I know we're like fairly short on time, I would say if you go to Dribbble, like Hey Digital's Dribbble profile, we've shared, it's over 650 different ads now that we've created, and we upload a new one there every single day. And so you can even use that as like a creative brainstorming or ideation board as well.
Got it. I think we have one question up until now on the chat thread, Dylan. So the question was around, as a B2B company which provides IT and professional services to federal, state, local, and commercial clients, like what should be the minimum dollar we should spend to have leads in a lead generation form?
Yeah. So I find it very hard to answer questions like this. I don't know, Praveen, if you have any like thoughts or feedback. Like for me personally, so I don't like to give like target costs because it really varies so much industry to industry. Like, yeah, it varies so much based on so many different criteria points. Personally, like when I was thinking about starting to run our own ads at Hey Digital, I didn't think there was any point running like any kind of LinkedIn ads aside from just remarketing ads, unless we were willing to spend at least like 2,500 to 3,000 euros or dollars a month on those ads, just because I think otherwise I know what a cost per lead for us will look like from our Google ads, for example. Like maybe it would have been 250, 300 euros or dollars to get someone booked onto a call. If I'm only going to spend 1,000 euros then on my LinkedIn ads, I'm just not giving myself enough ammunition for success to happen. So it's hard. I normally try and reverse engineer. Like if you're running ads on other channels, not saying LinkedIn is going to perform the same as those, but consider what your costs per call are, or your cost per your core conversion metrics are, and kind of reverse engineer that at least a little bit. Because I don't know, you might feel extremely differently, but personally, I think, and this is maybe a bit controversial, I think there's no point in just spending like $300 to $500 a month on ads on one channel. I just don't get it. Maybe for remarketing, but even then it's like if your traffic's not high, you're probably only going to spend like $50 or $100 anyway. So it's like you can have that, but if you're going to spend that on prospecting, I just don't think it's enough to make an impact. So I would probably think of it more like, okay, let's do, if your sales cycle is 60 days, run a 90-day experiment where you're prepared to spend 3K or 4K a month for those 90 days. You're prepared to like quote unquote lose it all if you have to, and look at it that way. But I don't know, maybe you feel differently. Yeah, it's really hard to tell, to be
Yeah,
honest.
very similar sort of point of view, that I think it's best to probably benchmark it based on some lead generation source that you already have. It could be Google Ads, it could be any other sort of channel. It could be outbound calling, and how many are you able to kind of get from that, or like content syndication and what's the cost per lead from that, right? Uh, Also, I specifically don't have any clients who operate in the same space, which
Yeah,
is
me
providing
neither.
services to like government services. So I don't even have like a reference point, right? I'm not saying a benchmark. I don't think there are benchmarks for all of this, but even a reference point to kind of start this. So I think, as you said, probably starting with another channel that's working for you to say, okay, this is what we are able to do right now, and probably relax that a little bit because you're obviously starting off on a new channel, and then give it enough budget for 1 month to see how it would work out is probably the best way to test this out. Cool. Dylan, I don't think we have any other questions. And I know we are on time as well. Thanks a lot for taking the time out. I really enjoyed
Of
the
course.
session. And yeah, excited to see how this works out in future.
Yeah, thank you for having me as well. I appreciate it. And thank you everyone for watching. Would love to connect with any of you. Just come and send me a message on LinkedIn if you're watching this. It'd be great to chat with some of you too.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.